So we're back again for another episode. This time we're going to focus on one movie, and that's Federico Fellini's immortal classic, La Dolce Vita, The Sweet Life. I have a complicated history with this film, to be perfectly honest. I remember reading a book by Roger Ebert, The Great Films, and in it he had this listed as one of his, I think, his top five favorite films ever. And I was like, La Dolce Vita. And I remember going up to the video store with my parents, and they had it on two VHSs, and I was like, this is the movie I want to rent. I remember my dad holding it, being like, you want to watch an Italian movie from the 60s that's this long? It's two VHSs? And I was like, that's right. And I was maybe like 16. No, I wasn't 16 because I would have drove myself up there. I was probably 15 then, so I was really young, 14 or 15. And when I saw that movie back then, it was a slog, honestly, to get through. I just didn't have enough life experience to know what the hell Fellini was talking about and why these scenes had so much dramatic tension and hold, great film reviewers and critics and other filmmakers, why they hold it in such high esteem. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I thought it was so overrated. I remember when I first got to film school, they were starting to talk about, oh, don't forget about Fellini's La Dolce Vita. And back in my mind, I was like, overrated, not a classic. What's going wrong with y'all's lives that you would think that it's that good? Thankfully, about my mid 20s, I worked up the courage to watch it again, and it was a revelation. It really was. I was like, oh, and I always, I get it, basically. I get it way more than I ever, well, I was going to say, because I just watched it recently, and I was like, oh my God, I got it even more now. It's like moving up further and further on my all-time great list, and it's like, I used to drive me nuts when I was younger, and people would be like, you'll get it when you're older. That was one of the phrases that could just trigger me so much, just like lock my jaw in anger, because I was like, I wanted to understand right here, right now, and if you're older watching this, you know what I'm saying. You get it. If you're younger, you're thinking I'm full of shit, and in time, you'll see I'm not. That there are, you know, whether it be a book or a film or TV show or just anything in life. Sometimes when you're encountering it early in life, you can't understand what you're witnessing, what you're a part of. And it's only through experiences and, triumphs and losses and all these things that you start being able to understand that, like, you're not so unique. All humanity, everyone who's ever been born and who's ever died, have gone through some of the exact same things you're going through. Maybe not in the exact moment you're going through them or experiencing the same exact way, but we've all dealt with loss. We've all dealt with moments of ecstasy, and it's something that unites us as humanity. It really does. And this film, after I rewatched it, I realized just how much of everyone's life is tied into these things that essentially they should set up this movie a little bit better. I'm horrible at doing this. I'm trying to get better, but the movie essentially follows Marcello. This he's basically a writer of high society, like what's going on for the news tabloids and everything, and his photographer friend Paparazzo. It's where they get the name paparazzi. Now that's ubiquitous and used everywhere, but this was the first film that popped up on. That's somebody that just goes around taking pictures of celebrities being, whether they're important or not, that has nothing to do with it. It's that they're a celebrity, and everyone wants to know what they're up to. And Fellini calls this La Dolce Vita, in my opinion, the sweet life, and based on what you watching in this is a man that's adrift in a decadent world, that there's no moral center, there's nothing really holding it up. It's just all fake. and a lot of it's just happenstance, and there's nothing, no real morality or something holding it together. And it's like when you're set adrift in that type of world, it's hard to keep your focus, and it's hard to keep your heart open, and not become cold-hearted. And we watch this character, his ambition is to write this great work of art that everyone will understand, and it's not so cheap like what he has to do for a living, these little tabloids and little vignettes about the high societies. He wants to write something that connects everyone. And ultimately, is that a fruitless journey? That how can you unite everyone if everyone's so distracted and into their own things? And to put it in just as simple of terms, it's a great movie. It's not even good. It's great. Um, more I've researched on it and looked into it. I love the poster, and that's Anita Ekberg, who appears in it. The famous scene. I think it's Trevani or Trevini. Again, I'm horrible at this type of stuff, but the fountain. She gets into the fountain. She's calling out to him, Marcello, come to me, and he's basically chasing this beautiful film actress for a night where it's just him and her, and it's so fleeting once he gets into the fountain with her, and he's trying to make this connection. She's thousands of miles somewhere else in her own mind, her own world, and where he's having this incredible moment of lust and energy and everything. He's just a peon. He's just there, and he doesn't really matter to her. And it hurts in a way, because I'm sure that a lot of us have experienced that with people that we're maybe passionate about, or hope that they get passionate about us, and it's just like we are not even on their radar. We're not even in their same universe, but yet we can share the same physical place. It's universal. We've all been there. And that's just a little vignette within all. This is a 3-hour movie. Okay, I told you it was 2 VHSs. It's freaking long, and it bounces. Essentially, from what I can tell, the structure is, it's the number 7 appears a lot. 7. I think it focuses on about 7 days, and they're spread out. I shouldn't say they're all like sequential. It's the morning and the night, and that's how he kind of splits up the filmmaking of this. And it's he meets a friend who he really envies and looks upon as like, oh wow, you got your life together, you got wife and kids, and then that ends tragically. And it's like you can build your whole world up on that, and it's ultimately we're all set adrift. We're just trying to find some semblance of meaning and purpose in this world that is constantly indifferent to our desires. And Marcello is looking for the sweet life, like what does it mean to have a balance? He keeps continually having frustrations with his mistress and his girlfriend, trying, one is rich, and the mistress rich and glamorous, but really doesn't care for him. He is a diversion for her in her aimless world. And then his girlfriend loves him with all her soul and wants to make a life with them, just them two versus the world. And he's like, just you, like I could have everything, why do I need to settle for just you? And it's like, it's tragic, because so many people pick that route, seeking the latest greatest thing and missing out on the greatest love of their life or moment of their life that's right there. They just take it, and we self-sabotage. And I think it's really what a lot of this movie is about whether you're high society or poor low society. It's that we self-sabotage. We put these roadblocks in front of us to prevent our own happiness, and that's tragic. It's ultimately what makes this a tragic story, and I remember reading um, Ebert saying that when he first saw this movie as a young man, he wanted to experience this sweet life that our main character is doing, going from glitzy party to glitzy party and, managing a bunch of women and all that. But he said, as I got older and I rewatched it, I started thinking like, this man is, I have contempt for this man. Why can't he see that he is his own problem? And he said, I think it was like, he watched it 30 years later after it had come out, and he goes, and he was no longer in love with him for the life he's living or angry at him for the life he's living. He held a certain amount of pity that, we have to choose, that we have to make our way through the world without any sort of guidebook, and that this is the character we're following, and it could be any of us that's going through this, what he's going through. And so, I wanted to highlight this movie in that, maybe sometimes you'll see a movie that you won't like or you'll think's overrated. And through time and your life experience, you'll come to understand maybe that that film was actually speaking some truth that you couldn't hear in the moment. And I I can't say I have seen all of Fellini's work. I've seen Eight and a Half. I've seen La Strada. It was really, really good. Um, and Eight and a Half was good. Eight and a Half was very decadent, opulent, um, very inventive, unbelievably inventive. And he's just got a great imagination. You can tell Fellini has a fantastic imagination. Of the Italian filmmakers, though, I've seen, I wouldn't put him as my all-time favorite. I would put Vittorio De Sica, De Sica. I don't know how you say, the guy who did Bicycle Thieves, Umberto D. A little more a neo-realist, a little more. I don't know. There's just a little more deeper humanity running through his films than Fellini. Fellini's, I feel, is a more play, more. Um, he's having a good time behind the camera, and that exudes through the film, and you can tell that he loves his characters, he loves the world that he's making. And I don't want to, I can't believe I brought up De Sica when I was talking Fellini, but I just want to say, like, he's a great filmmaker, an all-time great, and I really need to see more of his films. I need to go through all the 70s and stuff, and see what he had made. But I keep thinking, and from what I've read, it's either gonna, like, La Dolce Vita, Eight and a Half, and La Strada are pretty much considered his best of best. I have not seen Amarcord. Amarcord. I think it's one of the last films he made. I need to see that one because I heard from a lot of people that, like, he has a true return to form in that film, and I really want to see that so I can really compare all of his work. But I really enjoy La Dolce Vita more now than I have, 20 years ago when I first saw it. It's really getting better, and like fine Italian wine, I guess that's what it was always going to do. And so I strongly recommend you seek it out and give it a shot, and let me know how you feel about it in the comments. I'd appreciate it. All right, that's it for today. Have a good one.